I got it. So anyway, again, we're talking about, target schools, all your target schools must show individually that they are doing worse than the state or national rate, whichever one you choose. And if one of the target schools is doing better consistently than your comparison, then you need to really think about blessing them and letting them go if you can. And then about the rigorous secondary school program of study, you may have to run the numbers on a spreadsheet for both definitions
Right.
and to see which one shows the most need. Even though if you latch onto that more rigorous definition, it may cause you possibly to lose points on your APR every year, so be it. Okay. What I wanted to answer, and I guess again, I was say I want to live today, fight today, keep fighting. And someone had asked, what will the cancellation of UB impact talent search? Well, I don't think UB has been canceled. Do you mean the 3 grants that have been uh, their GANs have been canceled? The way I read it, for something their institution may have been in violation of. My initial gut, without knowing the specific, I meant the 3 grants. It could mean that if those institutions have talent search programs, and Teresa, were you able to find out which institutions? Does anybody out there know? I'm guessing they're on the East Coast. I'm just guessing because someone did post, and I think through just my little bad skills, I'm thinking it's a school in New York. I don't know if anyone knows, but the language, someone said Arizona and Pennsylvania. Interesting. Okay. And the language said it was basically, I don't think, Teresa, it was the project, anything, their performance or anything that was in their grant. I think, Teresa, it was something the institution did or did not do. Is that your
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, but it's so hard to know. It's really hard to know.
Yeah,
Really hard.
I don't know the details. I'm speculating. So I would think that if those institutions had talent search programs, then possibly, I'm just saying possibly, it could impact their talent search programs. Um, this is something that we have to consider. So anyway, that's my take on that. The minute I find anything else, I'm just speculating. Like I said, Teresa, my gut from the language in the letter doesn't make it appear that it's something the project did or did not do. But more so the institution was out of compliance with something. Do you think it's worthwhile to continue our grant writing efforts with the increased sense of uncertainty? Yes, definitely. I keep moving forward. Well, I can't sit here and worry about it, right? I worry myself to death. So I'm going to move forward, continue gathering the data. Um, nothing's for sure, but I don't know if you could offer any words of encouragement, Teresa, but I just can't stop. Otherwise, I'll drive myself crazy. So I keep going forward with the collecting the data.
Yeah, and I tend to kind of follow the guidance of COE, and they've been very consistent about until you're told that you do not have a job, then you continue to operate
Mhm.
for the betterment of the students that we serve. So, ultimately, we just continue to prepare for the next grant cycle because if we don't, then we risk not being able to serve additional students if we're not submitting these proposals.
Also, Teresa, I think if we are still seen at the target schools or seen like in Talent Search and EOC trying to gather this data, it's an opportunity to let people, our stakeholders, be aware and maybe advocate for us as well, you know?
Exactly.
Okay,
Mhm.
right? Never give up. Never give up. And even then, there are, ways, this is like they said, it's a long fight. Worst case scenario, we still have options to fight this, but we can't give up. So no, you don't want to cancel your efforts altogether. I mean, hold off for a while. No, this is the time. If anything, this is the time to gather your data, to look at these spreadsheets, go back and forth. The majority of information for both EOC and Talent Search you can gather yourself from websites, from the census and from state websites. And it doesn't mean have to be the state's education website. You can go to, I can't think of it right now, it's in our presentations, what city, school choice or school something, school view. Anyway, I'll try to remember and put them in the chat. But there are third-party websites that look at academics, low-income enrollment, college indicators, because sometimes when you go to like the Texas Education Agency, everything looks great. There's 100% graduation, 80% go to college. You look at the definitions. So I'm like, oh, I have to go to something else like that greaterschools.org or something and look there to see if I can get that information. So the things that you need to talk to the schools about are another issue I'm seeing, Teresa, is persistence. Everybody is persistence to the next grade level. They say they're at 98, 97%. And I'm like, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. It's not a fair baseline to make us gather, but life's not fair. But it is an objective. Not that I think it's a fair objective since we can't interact that much with the schools to make it happen, right? But anyway, I have to show need. So I've been telling my clients, Teresa, to go back and see, this is when they need to talk to people at the target schools. Well, you know what? I know you told me 97% of last year's students came back for the next year at the next grade level. But can you tell me how many came back to the next grade level with a GPA of 2.75 or higher? Okay, I'm throwing that layer in. It's a Hail Mary. It doesn't say I have to ask that. It doesn't say I can't ask that. But if I just stay back, just kind of like let it run me over and not show need, it is what it is. I'm just going to eat it. Well, if I'm brand new, I'm not going to get funded. But if I don't want to go on losing a point, what do I have to lose by throwing in that additional indicator and putting it in the definition that this is the persistence rate of students that have a 2.5 or higher? It should make it drop. Okay, and I'll crystal clear, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm going out for that extra, extra academic characteristic besides the usual. Went on to the next grade level, because guess what? No one is, I hate to say this, but I don't think the majority of the school systems are bothering to check if these students should be at the next grade level or next. They're just saying they all came back, or we had students moving in, right? That messed up the numbers, so to speak. So I'm telling them, look, if you can't show need the regular way or persistence to the next grade level, and really because the schools are telling you, oh, we don't track that, we just do enrollment only. Well, then I'm forced to go back and say, well, can you tell me how many came back with a certain GPA? And call it a day. And then if I have to use that as my definition to meet that objective, so be it. The other thing was if you could figure out how many credits with a certain number of credits. All right. But if you are not demonstrating need and persistence, and the same thing with graduation, regular graduation, 12th grade graduation is so high. Remember, you need to use 12th grade graduation. You can talk about the cohort graduation, but the baseline has to be on 12th grade graduation. So we're talking about 98%, 95%, the same thing. What about the number of seniors who graduated that had a 2.5 or higher GPA to make it go down? Now, some readers may see through it and say, I don't like that because you added something to it. But I got to give you points for trying. I get partial points because or I could get a brand new reader and they wouldn't catch it at all. And so, oh, that's terrible. Full points, but if I left it alone as is, I'm going to lose points there and I'm going to lose points in the objective section. Okay. So I have to do a Hail Mary, full disclosure, not hiding anything, but I have to add an additional barrier to those. I tell you, everyone in Talent Search is going to struggle with that one. So, don't feel you're alone if your persistence and your high school graduation rates are super high. You can always talk about the cohort rate as a more alarming feature. And that what I mean is cohort is tracking them from 9th to 12th grade, but you cannot base your persistence objective. You cannot base your graduation with regular diploma and graduation with rigorous secondary school program of study off of the cohort rate. I know because I lost points. They didn't get me in the need section, but they sure got me in the objective section. And I was like, wow, I'm not going to let that happen again, ever again. Okay. So notice my tone. I'm not giving up. Even if everything was great, I'd be fighting that, laying down and letting, just lose points. I'm going to do everything I can to not lose a point. What if a school is showing better in just one area? Will I lose points then? If you mean, Beverly, that the target school is showing a higher rate on one table compared to like it's doing better than the state or national, yes, I would take a point off. Okay, I would say, now is that going to cause you not to get funded? Probably not if you have enough prior experience points. But if you see that happening, then you need to make a decision. Do I go ahead and submit knowing that I'm going to lose a point there? And maybe you won't, but you should lose a point there. Okay, if it was me, I would take a point off there. I would say that target school is not showing need in this area. And I don't care about if I just treat each table alone, so maybe that's the only table, it doesn't matter. You'll lose a point there. And if you're okay with that, fine. Or I could say, what if you don't include them? Are they still in the target area? Could you still serve them? They don't need to be listed as an official target school if they're still in the target area. You can still serve them. You're not supposed to be serving them as often as you do your target schools. But if they're still in the target area, you can have your cake and eat it too. But if you want them listed officially, you have to be okay with possibly losing a point. Okay. So here's another question here. What do you do if your target schools demonstrate need? However, your target area is often doing better than state or national averages. Do you focus on zip codes or census tracts? Does that look obvious to the readers? Okay, great question. So you're saying your target school data, which is usually the other way around. Usually the census data is the least, is easier to show need. And I struggle with the target school data. Okay, so it's the opposite here. So that's very interesting, Diane. So it could be that your target area is too big. I always use the example where I was at in the city of Fort Worth. We were within one city and we had three grants in one city, Talent Search grants. I could never say, first of all, one entity serving, with 3 different grants, Talent Search grants I couldn't have the same target area. So we broke up the city into 3 main areas, and then not even 3 main areas, because there were some areas I couldn't serve because they made too much money. It was oil. There's a lot of rich people in Fort Worth, a lot of rich people in Dallas. So I couldn't even write for the city of Dallas. For those of you that work in Dallas or have Talent Search programs in Dallas, you can't say your target area is Dallas. You'd never be able to show need. So what you have to do, whether you're urban or rural, you'll have to redefine you have to look at sub-target areas. What about the neighborhoods around the schools, okay, or around some of the schools? That's where you have to, it's harder, and you have to drill a little bit deeper to get maybe 6 sub areas. In our case, it was 6 neighborhoods, 2 main neighborhoods for each grant. So our target area was a couple of neighborhoods within the city or within the county. And we ran the numbers for those areas of the neighborhoods where the students were living or where the target schools were. So it sounds like you may need to redefine your target area, but when you explain it to me in a paragraph, you have to end that paragraph that says something like, and within the one target area that's made up of 3 or 4 or 10 sub areas within the county or within the city, that one target area, because now it's one target area, even if it's made up different components, the following high schools are in that one target area. Okay. And obvious, no, I mean, I don't get that part of it, but you tell me right away, and it's perfectly great to tell me right away, the one target area consists of 4 neighborhoods surrounding the 6 target schools within the county of whatever. So now my target area is not the county, it's those sub areas that are within the county. Okay, so it's a little different. So I think your target area may be too big. Okay, so look at that. See if you can get, and you're actually being more accurate. Because if I said I'm serving the whole city of Fort Worth, no, I'm not. I'm not sitting this, I'm serving inner city or neighborhoods within inner city. Okay. EOC, I was recently told not to compare it to the US, just compare the target area to the state. That might have been their preference, but it all depends, Sharon. I always initially in my spreadsheet have it so I compare it to state and national. my hope is that the target area is doing worse than both the state and national, and then I lay it on thick. The more, it's the opposite of who you want to, it's our grant writer's dream in the needs section. If I can compare myself, how badly we're doing compared to 10 entities, is what I want to do. Just one is enough. But if I was doing worse than the state and the national rate, I'd bring it on in this one area. And then later on in another table, maybe I'm just doing worse than the state, but not the national. Then I would just compare myself purposely to whoever is making me look worse. It's the opposite of life, right? You're always trying to make yourself look better. In this case, the more entities you can look worse compared to, the better. But the regulations or the readers, they're not told, well, pick one over the other. Okay, so if you're doing worse compared to both, do worse. But there could be a situation where on a certain table, when I do all my numbers, when I'm, what? And that's what you run it for both numbers. And it happens all the time that in a couple of tables or on one table or half of the tables, we're doing worse than the nation, but not worse than the state. So I only compare myself to who makes me look worse, and I can't control it. So if I could control it, maybe I would just do it to the state, but this is assuming a lot. So it all depends on what the numbers are. Okay. And maybe that's their preference. Maybe they meant, I don't know what they meant there, but it all depends, there's no preference. I prefer to see folks comparing themselves to both the state and national rate if they both show a need. When I go to the next table and realize they just compared themselves to national and not state, then I can pick up, oh, they probably didn't have a need when they compared, to both entities, but they're showing me they have a need. So I can't live by that, because otherwise I'll never get anything funded. Okay, so I'm glad that was helpful. Let me see here. Any other chats? I do have something. Okay, I think you put, Diane, thank you. You put that in the Q&A. Let's see if there's any questions here. Anything else? Let me see here. Okay, so another issue that I'm coming across. Okay, here's a great question. Does the comparison have to be consistently be the same? It'll never be the same. I have never written a grant in all these years where my comparison stayed like from the first school data table where I showed need compared to state and national rate. And then the next table, state and national, where I showed, that I was doing worse across the board against the same two entities, has never happened. I've come close, but I've always had to switcheroo and said, oh, you know what? I gathered the data initially on a spreadsheet, and then I noticed, right there, we are showing need in all the individual schools, and the total average, we compare it to the state, but when we go to the national rate, we got a couple of target schools that are doing better. So guess what? The decision's made for me. I will just compare myself to the state. So where I show need. So no, the comparison does not have to be consistently to the same group. In a perfect world, you'd like to do it that way, but it's not, you're not going to be able to. And if you try to force it, you're going to lose points. I mean, straight out. It's hard for you to lose points. If they really can't go back and say, and if they did, you might, I don't know, Teresa, if you think they might have we might have a leg to stand on. If a reader would say, well, they didn't compare it to both entities. No. And sometimes I throw in the district level. For some of these target schools, you may run all your tables to see if you can compare yourself to the school district or the average of the school districts. And maybe that's another entity that you will do worse than, be struggling, and that's good. Or maybe it's going to save you in a table where, oh my God, we're doing better than state and national. I need something to compare myself to. Some folks, some of my clients have compared their rates to another school, a private school in the area as a comparison. So there's no set listing of who you must compare yourself to. It's just, traditional, it's traditional that you compare yourself to, well, they don't even say it's not stated, but in the past, we always try to do either comparison to state or national rate, both if we can. And I've never heard an EOC, that could be somebody's feedback, say, you know what, I wouldn't do that. But that's hard to do because then you're going to force me to compare everything to either the state or national. I can't remember. And I may not be able to do that. It depends on the numbers. Okay. So just to let you know, you can try to do the same comparisons on my spreadsheet. Initially, I compare myself to all the entities, district, where it's appropriate, state and national rate. And like I said, if I hit the jackpot and I'm doing worse than all of those entities, I'll say so. And on another table, I may only do, I'm lucky if I only am showing need compared to one of them. And so I just brag about the comparison to the one. I just can't conveniently, don't mention, that I'm not showing need compared to the other entities. I don't go there. Okay. Here's another area where I'm struggling with, and it's nothing new. And I bet, Teresa, you can relate to this. It's that darn high school to counselor ratio. I'm not able to show that. I think what's the national? I think the national rate, not recommended. You cannot use recommended. I mean, the only time I would use recommended as a Hail Mary and hope that I have a reader that doesn't figure it out. But I know I've lost points for sure when I have said, well, it's higher than the recommended ratio of 250 to 1. I mean, I may mention it like more alarming. This is, the ratio is also higher than this, but no, I mean, I have to compare actual to actual. And I think, Teresa, maybe 438 as the national rate. So you need to find a source that has it lower. You certainly don't want it higher, but I don't know why that 438 sticks in my head. I think we have some, you can quickly Google what's the national student to counselor ratio. And I believe we have actually in the Google Drive document that has it broken down by state. I think it needs to be updated. If one of y'all can check that for me, but I think it's 430 to 8. So that means I need to show, if I'm going to compare it to the national, see, this is a perfect example how sometimes, you know what? Let me get the state rate and the national rate ratio. And let's make sure that all our target schools are doing worse than at least one of them, or, has a higher ratio than at least one of them. And what I'm finding is that we don't. And that's where I have to look at the definition and say, look, they're not defining what they mean by counselors. So again, a Hail Mary is to say, well, what if we say they're college and career and financial aid counselors like we are? We don't do any advising, we help with college, career, and financial aid information. So, they say they have 6, but if we ask them again, I know we went on the website, they said they have 6, but if we talk to the right person on campus there, well, out of these 6, how many are spending more than 50% of their time just on college, career, and financial aid advising? Or, it says they have one counselor, or they have 2 counselors, but are they both here full time, or does one of them go to, or both of them go to the middle school and the elementary school also, or just one of them? So really they just have one full-time counselor. So I throw in full-time, and if that doesn't work, I throw in a definition that a certain percentage of that 50% of their time and effort is spent. That's the only way I can try to make this work. Because if I just left it alone, which I think is more inaccurate, then I would actually, lose points on that question, and I can't avoid it. And all my schools have to be shown that they have a higher ratio than the state or national, or maybe the district. This is where you dig into the district. But on that one, for sure, that's a toughie. So you might have to, you can't do it overnight. You have to ask the right folks on campus to help you out with this one if you're going to take it to that level. And full disclosure, I put in the definition under the table, put a little asterisk by number of full-time counselors, and put counselors that provide more than 50% of their time and effort on college, career, and financial aid advising. And I have to do that. I'm in a corner because just putting the actual ratios is not going to show any need. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions here. For the question, the presence of unaddressed academic, thank you, Teresa, unaddressed academic or socioeconomic problems of eligible individuals, including foster care youth and homeless children and youth in the target schools or target area. How many problems could you suggest considering you need to address foster care and homeless? Which adds to needs that must be addressed? Okay, so I love this question. The question itself is begging for mention. I mean, including, it doesn't say such as, but including, or it doesn't say or, foster care youth and homeless children and youth into target schools or the target area. It's not so much how many problems. And I think, Donna, can you look, and I'll upload it. We probably already put it up there, but there's a document in the Talent Search need data collection. In addition to the survey, I just developed this this Word document just to get you all thinking about what problems or issues you could run across your target school counselors, or are there counselors on campus, like here in Fort Worth, we had Because We Care communities and schools, you know, that are designated to work with at-risk population. Everybody's at risk, right? But you know what I'm saying? Or who's the person on campus that deals with the homeless or foster care youth? There always seems to be a person or a department on campus that deals with that. The document, and if you can't find it, Donna, I'll upload it. But it basically, honestly, all I did was I did a search. I did a, can you list some, or go to GPT and say, can you list some of the socioeconomic issues that foster care youth and homeless children in grades 6 through 12 face? And only so that you can get a listing of things that are specific to them. Because this question is not necessarily asking you to tell me how many or what percentage, right? And people were saying, well, if I don't have a high percent. I don't care. I don't care if you have one student at that whole school. I'm not asking you how many. I'm asking you to tell me what are some of the problems they're facing, the issues they're facing. And now these issues you would get would be generic, but now you can go back to your target school folks and say, are any of these the case? Would you agree? Can you add to this? You know, it could be like the starting point of what some of those problems are. They could say, no, not really, not that one. Oh yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, I do see a lot of students going through here. I say, okay, so would you be okay if I said that, you know, you agree with the statement that this is some of the issues these students are facing here on campus? So that's how you would get that going. It's not about the numbers, but you can't, even though I could easily, you and I can come up with a list right now. I can ask y'all, everybody give me one issue in the chat that you think homeless or foster care youth are facing at the target schools. And we gather that together. Okay, well, it's no good that we're just here coming up with reasons without actually asking somebody at the target school, or even your own target school staff, your liaisons, but maybe even your own Talent Search project staff, to agree, oh yes, that is the case here. We say it is. And your source would be interviews or a focus group with target school counselors or the Talent Search staff. Okay, but that's what I would do. And that's what I have done. Whenever I run across this and go, what could problems they could have? You know what, I'm not gonna, you could look at national studies too, but you can't quote national. Another client had said, well, you know, here in the state are, we've got, you know, the students, the foster care students at the state, I found, you know, here are the problems they have. And I said, okay, that's a good starting point, but you need to take that now to your target school folks or your Talent Search staff and say, hey, this is what it is for foster care homeless kids in the state. What do you see of these things here that are listed for the state? Can we say it's happening here in the target area at the target schools? Do you agree? Are some of them relevant or appropriate? Would you vouch for that? Would you agree with that? And we can say it came from the target, you know, from target school people agreeing to that statement. Because if you just quote state rates, I'll take a point up. I'll say, I don't care what the state says. You're not serving the whole state. How does this connect with what's going on in your neck of the woods? Okay, so that's how I would do that. I would first try to get a listing, come up with a listing that we can all possibly say, yeah, that's probably going on. And then take it, there you go. Thank you, Donna. You found it. And then take it to, she put it in the chat. and then break it down and say, is this happening? Because I can't, as a writer, say, at the national level, this is going on. I'll have to say, you know, per target schools, I could possibly mention that, but say something like, this is also the case locally. According to target school counselors, they also see, you know, happening at the target schools, the following issues that are happening at the state level. Okay, I can get that. If counselors say they spend only 25% of their time doing certain duties that are higher ed related, well, I don't know, higher ed related, you got to restate that. Again, college, career, and financial aid information, because that's what we do in Talent Search. So you want to make sure you state it that way, not just higher ed related. We can count them as 1/4. Well, depending on your definition, I mean, you could say that they're, you know, they have no full-time. There's nobody full-time to do that. I could from the get-go say full-time counselors. I could say that, you know, in my definition from the beginning. How many full-time counselors? I mean, if you just did that, how many full-time counselors? Don't break down the time and effort. Find that out first. And if that's still not helping you, then take it to the next level. Okay. And say, well, you know, out of these 4, and this is before we put it on paper to the readers, I got these 4 counselors. Well, how many are full-time? Well, only 3. Okay. Out of the 3, how many spend more than 50% of their time? Oh, out of those 3, I'd say 1. Okay, I'm going to put 1 and put 1 full-time counselor, and then put in parentheses, spending 50% or more of their time and effort. Okay, on that. So hopefully that'll help. Okay. You see, we still need to be in the fight. We still need to be talking to these target school folks. I mean, I see that I could possibly do 75% of the data collection for Talent Search for the target schools on my own, meaning using the internet to gather the data and going to different sources, you know, and documenting those sources to show the need. But the other 25%, I've got to talk to somebody, because when I go to the website and it says they've got 6 counselors, I got to talk to the right person on campus to find out how many are full-time, and then that time and effort. And then the question about, you know, about foster care youth and homeless youth, what issues they face. You know, I can do a search, I can come up with some stuff, but I got to get someone to say, yeah, that's true here at these target schools in this target area. I just can't make a general statement that I've heard, or this is what's going on national or even at the state level. Okay, it's got to be about your target area. Okay. We also have a target school survey. Now, I know, I'm pretty sure I put that in the Google Drive, the target school survey. It's too long, but I would never give it to the target school folks the way it is. So please take that into consideration. You need to look at those. It's got everything I could possibly think of asking folks at the target school to provide me with, but depending on your relationship and how well you know them, and maybe you know some of that data, you got to tweak that down. So hopefully it's just some of the questions, not everything, because they're, you know, busy too. Oh, Cindy, it's in PDF. Can anyone else open that that document? Let's see here. Okay, so we still have some time. Anybody with EOC questions? Let's see. EOC questions, you want to make sure you also have to do a lot of digging for data that shows your case. You know, the need section for EOC is vicious, man. I'd rather do 10 talent search ones. So I feel for y'all working on the EOC grant, because there's the question about employment and education trends. You know, and that takes talking to some folks or finding the right information. Be advised that it's that last question and the need section where I typically put my baselines for my objectives on, you know, how many folks will, you know, what's the baseline of high school dropouts right now that get a GED or a high school diploma within a year, which is very, very low. And then what percentage of adults, you know, complete a college application form, what percentage complete a financial aid form, and what percentage go to college. I usually put those in the very last question, and I label them that they're the baseline, so that the reader is well aware of that. So they're not guessing like, well, what's their baseline for these objectives? And that first one is going to be super low. And you will have to talk to, I don't think, Teresa, there's one place to go with EOC to get all your information. I think the data collection is easier for Talent Search. It's harder for EOC because you're literally all over the place. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, is it possible for the state to take over one of our target schools due to the low academic performance star testing? Oh, I know where you're at, right? The administration in Texas, right, must have been reassigned and they may lose a good number of students and teachers. Do you have any suggestions on how we could possibly proceed since we're currently writing? Well, I guess that's one of your target schools. The terrible person in me is saying, oh, good, that's an actual great need. Because now you could say, because of low academic performance, I mean, this is a positive for you in a sense, that school, definitely needs Talent Search because the state has said they are showing low academic performance and STAR testing. So yeah, that you're telling me the administration has been reassigned. They're going to lose a lot of students and teachers. So I'm not seeing the problem, Jason, unless you're worried about once you get funded, how you will continue to work at that school. Is that the real issue? Because the need is there, Teresa. I don't see any problem in the need. I see possibly an issue after you get funded because it seems to be that maybe you're worried about getting back in there. Is that the way you see it, Teresa?
Yeah, and one of the things I'll add is, and I've used this before, to couch Talent Search in the What Works Clearinghouse. There was a study that said that Talent Search showed a high level of evidence that it actually helps students to stay in school. So in the study, it didn't say that it was it had high what is it called? A high level of evidence that the program got students into college, but what the study showed is that there was a high level of evidence that the students actually stayed in school. So that could be part of your pitch. If you need to make that pitch, then that may be some evidence that it's a little bit old. The study is a little bit older now, but I've used it in multiple ways when I've written talent search grants or even when I've talked to the school. So in that instance, staying in school may be what you pitch in addition to the college prep support as well.
So, but Teresa, I think what you're saying is when it comes to the delivery of services, or you could say, not only does this school demonstrates need not only with college enrollment, but
Mhm.
dropout prevention services,
Right.
which they will desperately need. So, Jason, you said, yes, that's my assumption that need will be increased. Yes, what you're telling me right here is wonderful. I know it's terrible, right? In reality, it's terrible. But in this crazy world of grant writing and trying to show need, you want to capitalize on this in a sense to help students. And this will be more justification, if anything, as to why the program is needed at that target school. All right. Now, on a separate issue, it's been my experience, and I think Teresa, you know which schools I was talking about. You probably have more experience in different areas. Mine is really initially in Fort Worth. The school that showed the most need like this was also the school that it was the hardest for us after we got funded to try to get in there to serve students on a consistent basis. But that's later. Get, if you want to keep serving that school, I mean, because they need you and you've got the data, so you want to serve them. Use them, but you want to serve them. I'm not saying use them and then don't serve them, but then try your best to get in there. In my experience, I always try to get in every single year, definitely every single funding cycle, and I was completely shut out. But that's okay because I had other target schools that the numbers came from, so I don't have to reserve. I did for the first year. I said, oh, let me save 50 slots for this school because they really need our help. Well, they weren't giving us anybody. So I had to give those slots away to another school. So it's first come, first serve, as long as I was able to document that I made attempts to go in there and I have a letter from the superintendent. But you know how it is in reality. It's the right person. It could be the principal secretary that doesn't let you in the door for whatever reason, and that could totally shut you out. right? But go ahead, and your intent is right now, we want to serve them. We have a plan to serve them. In your plan of operation, you could bring up, or in your justification, in the objective section, when you go to set the objective on persistence, you would bring up one of the target schools has been taken over, so much low performance, which indicates a need for dropout prevention services. So that's why I could say it's ambitious yet attainable, because you all will be providing those dropout prevention services. And then you could remind the reader in the plan of operation, because there's one or more than one school that's struggling and will be taken over for the state. Talent Search will provide, dropout prevention services. Now, getting in there, we'll talk about that later. Let's see here. Okay, so good, we got that. Done. Let's see. Okay, so Cindy, you were able to get that. Great. Glad you could. Any other questions, y'all? We still have 10 minutes left. Let's see here. Budget, I'm getting a clue from the folks that did receive their upward bound GANs. It's level funding. So I believe we'll all get level funding, which means that probably when the RFP or the program application comes out, they'll say you need to base your first year budget on whatever you got on your current GAN, which we're waiting to receive. Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but the timing is not so off. I mean, we typically don't get our GANs for the next year until, gosh, what is it? Mid-June or early July. Teresa, if you can remember when you would get your GANs for programs that start in September. So we're not behind.
July is historically over the 25 years. July is about when you get them. Every once in a blue moon, it may be a late July or August. I'm sorry, but very rarely is it that late. And June is actually good.
So we're not behind, right now. I mean, people will say, "Oh my God, I'm worried about the delay." Well, technically, there's not a delay. Okay, not yet. When 5 years ago, it was the second week of July when we found out, or maybe it was July 6th or 7th when we found out we were refunded. So we're not behind on anything. Do I anticipate a delay? No, I don't anticipate a delay. So mid to late June. And again, someone asked earlier, I was surprised by those cancellations, those three. I would be worried that if they had any talent search programs or any other SSS programs, Teresa, that might also be the trend. My assumption, and I guess there's a meeting is it tomorrow or Thursday with the COE? That's what I would definitely want to ask, clarify if this was the way I read it, something that was the institution was held to, not necessarily the individual project's performance or lack of, or whatever they put in their proposal, because their proposals were written before the executive orders. So, really can go back on that kind of thing. Yeah, so someone says they're, okay, Wednesday, thank you. Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern is that COE meeting. So somebody please get clarification, am I reading this correctly? My question, if I could get through, would be like, okay, so is this based on the institution's violation of civil rights? So it really has nothing to do with the project, right? If the project, it wasn't their proposal and it wasn't their performance. I did have somebody contact me who said she'd been going through her proposal, Teresa, combing through it to see if she'd written anything, this was upward bound, that could be DEI related. And I'm like, well, even if you had, that was before the executive order. And, I don't know if this makes you feel any better, but I don't think it's anything that that project director or staff wrote or did. I think it's actually, again, per the institution, not which, I don't think made her, I wanted to tell her, stop looking for something you did, because I don't think it's anything you did. I think it's, out of your hands, basically. And I don't know if that was helpful, you didn't do it, but it's something that you can't control did it. I mean, which is
Yeah.
worse, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so someone said a message from the said there, yeah, I saw that message too. But was it, did they say it was something that was in their proposal or something that the college did or did not do? Um, I almost had a client from one of the schools. And this was earlier, Teresa. I don't know if I shared this with you, but we were talking about going into a contract and everything was good. And then the very next day, that campus on the East Coast, there was a lot of news about something happening in the library there.
Mhm.
And there was other news about federal funds being cut off to that institution. And then she contacted me and said that they're closing us down um, uh, because of what happened there. And she goes, I was expecting it because, so nothing she did. It's because of, another entity on the institution basically was getting, you know, um, because of whatever they think they did or did not do was cited as something. And so that's what pulled their ticket, not necessarily anything that the project had done or written. That's a little unknown how the proposal. Yeah, see, they said because of the proposal, I'm interested. That's because I didn't see that in the wording of the letter that came from COE showed the wording. I didn't see where it addressed their said that their proposal had anything in there. You know what? It's really in the past, you didn't really have a lot of room to make TRIO grants DEI, possibly in the quality of personnel, but the question was begging that. Um, and it was before the executive orders. So you see what I'm saying? You can't go back and penalize for something that wasn't in place before. So they should have gotten a chance to rewrite. And like they mentioned with SSS, Teresa, they've been talking about
Mhm.
one of the CPPs might have to be revised or rewritten. I think that SEL one
Right.
possibly, but
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
only be for people who got funded and then they'd say rewrite it. Is that what you
Right.
heard? Yeah.
Yes, that's what I heard.
So, you know, I don't know. See, you see why y'all that I don't think that's why I think Teresa, it doesn't have anything to do with the proposal. Um, uh, because if that's the case, then, I mean, um, I don't know how they would have reviewed it, where they would have had the time and people to go through and reviewing,
Mhm.
unless these were institutions that are, in the headlines right now, for getting federal funding cut completely. And they've gone and looked at some of those proposals, but I don't see how they can, I don't know, Teresa. I don't know what you think, but I'm going by, I don't think it's anything that's in their proposal.
Yeah. I'm not sure. But I'm leaning more toward it's probably more institutional than the specific program.
And I don't know if that makes anybody feel better, like, well, it's nothing you did. Oh, phew, well, wait a minute, I'm still in a pickle, right? But like this person was, like, I keep going through it. I said, stop. I can almost guarantee you that it's nothing you did, nothing you wrote. And plus you probably have a leg to stand on because you were writing under a different set of rules, blah, 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 whatever. So anyway, we'll see. Please, somebody ask, get clarification on that. I'm dying to know how they can go back and read or decide. It'll take them forever, Teresa, to read the grants and pull everything. Look how much fun we had looking at those. I think we ended up doing 20
Uh-huh.
proposals. They weren't all trio. We went back and had to look for DEI stuff, for another client. And we found that even when we took, especially with the trio programs, when we took out anything remotely related, it didn't change the program. It was just stuff that they probably didn't need in the first place to put in there because the questions didn't beg for it, but they felt compelled to put it in there, I guess, to show more need. But even when we took out that language, the proposal itself showed need, you know. So, you know, yeah, I feel bad for them too, especially, well, either way, I feel bad for them, but really if it was out of their control, right? I feel super bad for them as well. Alrighty, so 12:59 right here Central Time. I think that's all the time we have today. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found it in a way, you know, I'm hopeful. I'm keeping on, keeping on. I'm not going to give up. I'm still keeping my meetings with my clients. We're still working for data back and forth as though this is, you know, you have to put one foot in front of the other, hope for the best. You know, let's see how we feel after the information we get from COE on Thursday or Wednesday. It's in the chat. Can't keep my days straight, but thank you all for joining us. This will be on our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, if you want to email me or Teresa, and we'll answer you as soon as we can, but we'll also probably cover that. If you don't want, we won't use your name, but we'll cover it in our next meeting next Monday. Okay. Thank you all so much. Have a great week. All right. Be hopeful, please. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Teresa. Thanks, Leticia. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. Y'all have a good week. Okay.